Hello, this is the luckiest maths teacher in the world. Thank you so much for tuning into this video in which we look at the square root. So the square root has this weird symbol here that is on your calculator. Now, it's great if you know how to use your calculator, but I just want us to be able to do this without calculators. So by now, you probably know that, say, multiplication and division undo each other. If I start with a random number like 6, and then times 4, and then divide 4, the times 4 and divide 4, they cancel each other out. They undo each other. So I'm left with what I started with, which is 6. Similarly, addition and subtraction undo each other. If I start with a random number like 10, let's say I minus 9 and then add 9, minus 9 and add 9 undo each other, I'm back to where I started. So if you add 2 to a number, for example, you can subtract 2 to undo that and get back where you started. So it turns out square root undoes squaring. And we looked at squaring in the last video. So square root undoes squaring in exactly the same way multiplication and division undo each other. So if I take a number like 7 and I square it and then square root my answer, I'm back to where I started. It doesn't matter if I do it in the opposite order. It doesn't matter if I say square root 7, then square it. I still get 7 because square root and squaring undo each other. So if I have something that I want to calculate like this, square root of 36, what I am saying is, what number do you multiply by itself to get 36? What number can I put in both of those boxes to get 36? Of course, 36 is equal to 6 times 6. 36 is equal to 6 squared. So that means that the square root of 36 is equal to 6. 6 is the number you multiply by itself to get 36. So let's say I wanted to find the square root of 100. I'm saying, what number do I times by itself to get 100? The answer there is 10. I multiply 10 by itself to get 100. So in the previous video, I told you things will be so much easier for you if you know your square numbers from at least 1 squared to 20 squared. All the way the square numbers from 1 to 400. That will make these calculations really simple. Now, because I went and did my maths homework and learned the square numbers from 1 squared to 20 squared, I know, for example, 15 squared is equal to 225. So because squaring and square root undo each other, the square root of 225 is equal to 15. Because 15 times 15 is 225. So now I just want to take a very quick look at the square root when it's not a perfect square. So in the previous video, we looked at numbers that were square numbers. Another way to describe them is perfect square. So 1 is a perfect square because it's 1 times 1. 4 is 2 times 2, 9 is 3 times 3, and so on. All of these numbers here are perfect squares. And I'm hoping you can go all the way to 400. So I know that 1 is 1 squared, and 2 is 2 squared, and 3 is 3 squared, and so on. So because of what I was saying on the previous slide, squaring and square root undo each other, I know that the square root of 4 is equal to 2, for example, and I know the square root of 9 is equal to 3. Now, if I have a number between 4 and 9, it's not going to be a square number. You can't write 5 as a whole number times by itself. 5 is not a perfect square. 6 is not a perfect square. There's no whole number you can times by itself to get 6. What if I wanted to find the square root of 6? Now, your calculator can do that. It will give you a number that has heaps and heaps of numbers after the decimal point. I don't expect you to be able to come up with that number, 2.45 blah, 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 off the top of your head. But what I want you to be able to do without a calculator is note that because 4 perfect squares, square root of 4 is 2, square root of 9 is 3, the square root of 6 must be somewhere between 2 and 3. 6 is between 4 and 9, so the square root of 6 is between the square root of 4 and the square root of 9. Similarly, if I wanted to find the square root of 20, well, 20 is not actually a perfect square. If you put it on your calculator, would give you another number with heaps of digits after the decimal points, like 4.47. So what I want you to note, because 20 is between 16 and 25, the square root of 20 will be between 4 and 5. So it'll be somewhere between 4 and 5. So we don't need to be able to come up with the square root of a non-perfect square off the top of our head. I want you to be able to tell me between which two integers, which two whole numbers it will lie. All right, thank you so much for tuning in to this video. This has been the luckiest maths teacher in the world. Have a great day.